Man, this I know exactly what they're doing. I'm done. So if you guys have been subbed to the channel for a while, you know why I took the last couple days off. I was waiting for a hot fix on Tiernalia to get the devotion clause because people found a way to exploit this, put hundreds of turns of frost and just get hundreds and hundreds of points. And I don't like playing Gwent when if you can't deal with one little combo, then you just can't win. And I've been trying to deal with Symbiosis and try some of the new archetypes, but unless you're carrying a heat wave, you weren't able to win this matchup by any means, and it just seemed like every time I queued, it would be into the same thing. So again, it strips the creativity out of the game, so I let it sit for a couple days, and sure enough, CDPR did the right thing and patched it up the way it's supposed to be. So now we can play Frost as intended. I took this deck from rank 1 to pro rank, guys, and the only game that I lost with it was when I queued into Frost spam, and it was during the period where they fixed the devotion clause and made it say it on the card, but it still wasn't reflecting it, so people were still able to get away with the exploit. But other than that, this hasn't lost, so it's pretty good so far, and it plays heavily around Wild Hunt. We got the White Frost leader ability, so move an enemy to the other row and spawn Frost on the row for 2 turns, charge 2. Whenever you play a Wild Hunt unit, boost it by 1 if there's Frost in the opposite row. So it's nice to be able to get Frost down before we play cards, obviously, because we want to get those extra complementary points, but I understand sometimes it's not something that we can do, so you don't want to go and waste Frost just to get that extra point. Now, this plays around a few things, right? We have Wild Hunt, we have Dominance, and we have, of course, the Frost. So there's a few decks to watch out for here. So Tiernalia is the location that was controversial. Now it's feeling pretty proper, and it has resilience. So if we play it on one round, we can carry it over into the next round, which is great. I like to be able to play it in round 2 so that I can carry it over into round 3. And on deploy, boost an allied unit by 0, increase the value by the number of unique Bronze Wild Hunt cards in your starting deck. So this makes me want to be able to play more tags in the Bronze end. I believe we have 9. If you look here at what the options could be, you know, there are a couple more we didn't include. So it would be bronze onlys. We have the Hound and we have the Taskmaster that are something that we could. I just felt like Dominance was often a struggle to get, so I didn't really like the Hounds in that case. Plus they tend to go tall and we're playing against a lot of Knights for Nilfgaard, so again, just gives them an even better reset target. And the Purify, I didn't feel like it was absolutely necessary. If we're playing against a matchup where we need to get around a defender to do something there, again, we can just move their defender. And as far as what we want to purify on our side of the playing field, I didn't really see much value in that, right? Because a lot of our stuff is just deploy or has Veil already, right? The only things that we'd want to purify potentially would be Eridan or the Winter Queen, and if you're really that worried about it, you could change Tactical Advantage to a Crystal Skull and just have that taken care of there. So that's why I didn't include these two, but I tried to get as many tags as possible. It's nice to have a little bit of a lock option here and just a little bit of a movement tech, right? Another one, just in case we run out of pushes, but we need to split the rows up a little more. So there's that. So you are getting 9 on the deploy here. And then, of course, whatever Frost that we accrue that we don't use, we can carry over with this here. So pay attention to that. Don't be afraid to use stuff like Ardgeth or Red Riders on, you know, a round that you're playing something like this, because then you get the carryover points, and it just makes a big difference, right? So yeah, it's the amount lost on the round transition. So you have these you could play, they pass on you, you go into the next round, you bleed with this, you got tons of Frost, right? So there's that. Auburn King, obviously you want to play this in Devotion if you can. I tried it in non-Devotion way back when, last patch I tried to do a non-Devotion Frost deck. Didn't work out as well. It's really underwhelming at its second stage here, but we have Veil and spawn and play a Wild Hunt unit from a starting deck, so huge, right? We get to create whatever we want that we have. We have 9 different, well, we have 8 different options because Red Riders don't count. So you have tons of stuff that you can think about there. And whenever you play a Wild Hunt unit, boost it by 1. So we could be getting a boost from this card, plus the passive leader. So imagine just putting down a 7, turns into a 9. You put down the 5, turns into a 7. Like, that's a lot of free points, right? Most often off the Oberon, I'm taking the Bruiser, I'm taking the Conqueror, or I'm taking the Riders if I haven't thinned that combo out yet. But again, it's very situational. You can take whatever you think is best at that time. If you need a lock, that's something you can do. If you need to chip down something that's like a 4 power, well, you have that removal reach here with that you can double up on. If you have tons of Frost carryover from the Ternalia, then you can go and you can take the Navigator and you can get like a really big boost, right? So there's no shortage of options of what you can do there. Eridan's just a good card. So we get Frost for 2 turns, but on Dominance, we get to increase the damage dealt by Frost by 1. So if you can get this card out as early as possible and keep it alive, you're doing pretty well. We have ways to keep it alive now with the Navigators. So I like that little play, right? It's Navigators, but as well as Ternalia's boost if we're using it that way. Another really good way to just keep it going, keep the dominance there, and just prevent it from getting killed. So there's that, right? Negafar just basically, this is more of like a late round 2, round 3 type play, right? It's consistency play. We want to find the last couple cards that we missed. Hopefully we didn't miss any, but you know how it is. So we can find gold, play it that way. Fairly inexpensive, keeps it devotion, which is nice. Imlerith's Wrath got a bit of a buff, right? So we don't need Imlerith anymore to get this to work. So that feels pretty good to me. We can just go and basically get Frost on a row, and then we can use this to destroy whatever we want. This plays really well into the Nilfgaard Knights matchup because things go 30-40 points. And we can just remove that all by just putting Frost on a roll. Simple, right? So Ardgeth for Frost there. Winter Queen, Access to Thin. Also, there were situations where it kind of scares the opponent. Sometimes they stop doing the math on turn end. Sometimes you can get them in really awkward situations and get a pass out of them and actually just get them to make mistakes there. And, you know, by putting a bunch of Frost, you know, sometimes it's hard to add up all the 2s, right? So once both players have passed, boost self by 2 for each turn of Frost remaining on the opponent's side. So you don't feel afraid to stack the Frost up pretty high just because we have, you know, this, and we can get it all back. So I like to set that up in round 1. Again, Crystal Skull could just be what you sub it in there. Maybe I'll just upload the deck with this so you guys don't have to change it. But that's kind of the way I'd go about it. I like Toad Prince. I like Toad Prince even more when I can chip down 6s with Frost or 7s with Frost with Eridan and then go and eat a 4. I think Toad Prince plays really well into the Northern Realms spam right now. So all those Reavers that you're getting, this could be a game changer, right, for taking away the Bonded. And I just like to have it here. I've used it in situations where there's a false Siri on my side of the playing field. I wouldn't have eaten that, right? If they take the Boo Hurt, they put the false Siri on my side, I eat it. So then they don't get it back at 8 points and counting. So there's like a lot of cool stuff you could do with that. But I mainly try to use it offensively and eat something that they have on their side, right? Gale's really good card since the reconstruction. Plays for a ton of points, plays for a ton of consistency, does not fail, right? We have Deploy, play a Wild Hunt special from the deck. Devotion, play a Wild Hunt card. Again, huge. We have Devotion, so that's what we want. So we can go for, you know, anything we need, right? Which is massive, even the location. Okay. Caranthir is one of the new cards. I didn't get to put out a video on the new monster cards prior to the patch just because of a time constraint. So I'm making sure I kind of touch on what I think of the cards here in this video a little bit. But Golden Child is one of those cards where I don't think it wins games. I think it's a little bit more of a win more. But I think it's kind of difficult to take out of the deck because it has a potential for playing for a lot of points. So if you think about Gord, for example, in Skellige, place roll at 15 points, this card could play technically for like 20 plus points. Because if I split up the rows well enough, and then I have 4 damage of Frost for 5 turns, that's getting a boost at like 20. You know what I mean? And at 8 provisions, like, it's really good. The problem with this card is that if you're playing against the Knights matchup, which is something you often will do, then it might actually be worth taking out or substituting, because if you don't have last say, you can't really play the card because they'll reset it with the Beauclair. So what I find myself doing every single time is putting this back in the deck and not even playing it. So in that matchup specifically, you might get more value from Nithrol, right? So that's something that I would probably consider if that's all you're queuing, just because even though this doesn't play for 20 plus points, you know, at least it doesn't get heavily reset with no repercussions. Like they can just go and put anything, right? A Spores can answer this card even too. So you got to be careful that you win round one and that you have last say in certain matchups that you know have tall punish in order to play this card. It's kind of one of those things, but I decided to go and put it in here. Again, I'm not disappointed with this as an option. I just feel like this is a little slower. And, you know, we have a lot of fast plays. So there's that. Parrying Phantom, good engine, good removal reach by having the damage. Ancient Foglets. In previous versions of Frost, I used to put 1 in Non-Devotion. When I did it before it was broken, I put 2, I believe. But in this version, I feel like 2 is adequate because we have more ways to give Frost, right? And we can really bank it. So the Foglets feel really good there. I like Red Riders in case we have to replace something that's important. But again, 4 turns of Frost on one row or 2 and 2 is really good for setting up Karen Thyr and just making sure that we have Frost on rows to play things to get the extra points, right? Just works out quite well. Bruiser's probably one of my favorite cards. Just moving things, getting the damage if they're pushed to a row with Frost. So you can get like essentially an extra 2 damage. If you push something to a row that doesn't have Frost and it's like 4 power, you can kill it on that push. It's really nice and satisfying. Deck Thinning. This card was a little bit underwhelming, but I could see it being really good in some situations. So here's the thing. You got to make sure that this has higher base power, or sorry, higher power in general than what you're obviously infusing, because you want to get that lock off, right? But at the end of the day, even if you don't get the lock, you still get a pretty good value play. So gain vitality equal to the total duration of Frost on the opponent's side of the battlefield, and infuse it with, at the end of this turn, if there's an enemy Slave Trader with higher power than your own, set the power to 1, then lock self. So, you know, if something's boosted by a few points and it has an order or like a reoccurring effect or charges or whatever the case, you could lock it, which is great. But you'd have to play this at 3 with Oberyn 4, Frost makes it 5, the Vitality makes it 6, and then, you know, I guess you could use a stratagem on it, which really boosts it up a little bit, but that would be like the only case, and then you'd have to have, you know, just at least on the turn end, it being higher than what they have. So careful with that. In round 1 makes it a little bit trickier to use because you don't have the Oberyn play, but you do have the strats, so either way. I just think, you know, if I'm getting 7 or 8 turns of Frost and 7 or 8 turns of Vitality, it still does play decent in a long round, especially if you play Tyrannalia early, so there's that. And, yeah, Nagelfar's Crew feels like a staple to me. Engine plus control, low base power, so it's nice. It makes it awkward for them if they have really good removal options, and it's such a low power card. And this here, again, kind of gives us an extra turn of Frost is how it works. So at the end of your turn, spawn Frost for 1 turn, each enemy row to which Frost was applied this turn. So if you have this floating, you can really just sort of creep up and get extra Frost value. I don't like 2 of them because it requires dominance and for that to work, and also the extra condition, the card's not very difficult to remove. So I feel like 2 of them doesn't really go as far as like maybe 2 of the warriors, for example. So that's why I only put the 1 here. Again, just to get the extra tags, I decided to take 1 warrior out and put a navigator in this version, because before navigator was unplayable, but now navigator seems conditional but good, right? So you can get 7 or 8 boost off this if you do it right, and I think that's quite reasonable in a deck like this. So yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. Like I said, it took me to pro. Is it meta? I don't know if Devotion will ever be meta, but again, I think it's strong enough to get you to pro rank, and I think it's strong enough to compete within pro rank. I'm sure someone can take this to 2500 for sure, and it has tried true against a lot of the common matchups. So the Nilfgaard Knights one, the Northern Realms Reaver spam, you know, there's been a couple others, Skellige warriors that this has been able to compete with. So this would do well against Kelly. You know, there's a lot of stuff like that. So I hope that you guys enjoy it. I've got a few games for you guys here, about 5 games with commentary for reference, so you could see for yourself how it plays and sort of the overall strategy that I have. And if you enjoy the content that you see, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And we're pushing 13k subs, and we're about to get there, so it'd be really sweet. But for now, guys, let's get into the gameplay. So for the first game here, we got Skellige, Blaze of Glory, and going into this matchup, we have to be mindful of the fact that they have a lot to remove engines, and they likely have Morkvarg for a tall punish for one of the Foglets or Caranthir. So I do believe that the coin is important, and obviously we want to put ourselves in a position where we're able to go last to protect some of the big points here. So just looking at the mulligans, we can get rid of the bricks, and we want a hand that we can play deep into the round with so that we can win the round. It's important for us, I think, to try and win the round on even, so we can go into round 2 and maybe bleed out some of their combo pieces like Iced or Sove if they're running Sove in the new version, which I would expect in something like this here. So putting down the framework, getting something like Naglfar's crew here, and just getting the early engine keeps us in this here. I don't think dominance should be a problem against Skellige unless they actually take leader or unless they take Sove in round 1. So we have, you know, the riders that we could thin here, I think should just be fine.
Reasons for the feeble of heart.
I believe that they're trying to intimidate a little bit and just cram some points, try and get out of the round if it means that. We got to be careful. So if we're going to commit a little bit, I think it has to be here so that when they do get to 7, we can be on pace with them with 7. So a little bit of a thin doesn't hurt, and taking a leader in this case is going to help us really get started with, you know, a lot of points and preventing a lot of points. And because I have the 2 bruisers in hand, we're just feeling pretty good about wanting to keep those rows separated. So Winter Queen just won't live in a matchup like this. They have too much removal. Now, I could just gem the Foglet, and I think it should be pretty safe. Given the 5 turns of Frost there, we're getting a pretty decent boost. It's got to be one of my favorite cards from the new expansions, that Brokvar Warrior. It's like really strong. Again, stick to the script here. Already plays for +5. It's awesome. And then we have 2 turns of Frost on the back row, so we'll be pushing things back. I want them to play something that at least has 4 base power, so when I push it back, it gets the double proc. Otherwise, I don't know if I'd be willing to use a bruiser. I just opt to go and pound this row here because, again, we could pull into Tiernalia and we can get the ability to sort of bring that Frost as carryover, so it doesn't feel too bad here. Deadly being able to go and play the new raid card there and actually just get like a 3rd Highland, it's nuts, without even having to use the resurrections for it. we got a couple choices here. I could either capitalize on the Navigator, or you could just go with the Bruiser. I think Navigator just feels pretty good. Reduce the Bloodthirst, reduce the payoff. They have Frost jammed on the row. We've got a couple good point slams, so we did alright. It took a leader charge, but I think it was worth it. Besides that, it was just a bunch of bronzes, and Qcento plays for a lot of points here. I wouldn't mind even just slapping it down if we pull it, just to try and bait out some of that removal. Because I feel like the short round with Eridan, Oberyn, like these things should just be really good. That's kind of why I like having the Qcento in the deck, even though it feels really greedy. It's just the fact that we're looking at 16 points for 8 provision, and it can go higher than that. I don't have a lot of proactivity here, but I can feel pretty good about trading Qcento for Sov any day. I know it's not going to be a 2-0 because Skellige can defend the bleed pretty well. The idea is just to bring them into a round 3 with little left, right? So obviously I don't like playing tall like this at this point, getting the extra boost on it, but I want to carry over the Tyrannalia to the next round. So the only thing you can really do here is either you can boost that up to 25, or you can maybe go and take one of the Conquerors and, you know, boost that, for example, afterwards. Either way, once they take a Morkvarg or Tall Punish, it puts us in the same situation, really. Just comes down to let's trade some bronzes for golds at this point. Yeah, so looking at that here, if I were to take the 9 boost and put it on the Conqueror, they'd still go and they'd take that Morkvarg, which would still keep us like far behind. So I think it's fine, and I do know that we have a little bit of room to push here, because it's very difficult for the opponent to know what we have and to know if we can make it. Monsters has a way of like really creeping back, so. And I'm trying to be realistic about it here, like, can we actually win it, you know? Push back Bran here, that's quite a lot of points, right? This might keep them in it, but I don't think we could play anymore, because these days in Gwent, 20 points in 2 turns is certainly manageable. People feel less inclined to hero pass, but in 1 turn, it's kind of getting risky here, and I'm glad that I kept going. Yeah, that's just more than enough. Like, we didn't get out the iced combo, but we got the Sov, the Morkvarg, and the Herald out of the way. I was able to get the carryover from the Tyrannalia. Now, we did go and we did play the Qcento, but it's fine. I think that it's well worth the trade, just given the provision here. Now we just have to sort of pull good enough cards to win a game. It's much better.
Easier that way.
Might as well get the frost started early, right? Just kind of deciding what I should play.
Toss it onto the pile, then burn it
What's
with the
been
roots.
played. They played so many warlords that they're just going to eat through whatever we put down. That's the problem. But we got to go for points, right? It is a somewhat short round, so... Yeah, look at that. Always play opposite of Frost, guys. It's really important, right? Like, you gotta make sure you're getting all these extra points. I've been watching a lot of Gwent this season, and I noticed that, you know, far often, you know, people will have Frost on their range row, but then they'll go and they'll play something on their own melee row. It doesn't really work like that. Always got to think about the leader's passive abilities. And what do we got here? You know, like, good lottery there, because it puts Judah, like, right in the removal range, I guess. I should probably just put on both rows, because then the bruiser gets more value here. So far we got a decent toad setup. The thing is, I gotta take that out, otherwise it gets hit by the frost and we lose points. So toad set up at the iced, which is great. Otherwise we can remove it with the bruiser. And then we got just a toad to eat whatever else. I'll take what I can get at this point though.
Over my dead and cold body.
That was actually a mistake. Looking at that now, I should have actually pushed the ice forward, because it would have killed the iced. And then we would have had a 4-point toad with the Skellige, right? Because it would have been on the back row. So we lost a point with that there. Luckily, it didn't cost the game, but just two little nitpicks there that would have saved us actually a few points. Moving on to the next one, here we have Hospitality. This is the new leader ability. It's been really common this season, and with this deck here, we have what it takes to beat it. It's a very uncomfortable matchup because we go very tall and they have really good resets. So again, if you don't win that round one, or you're not in a position to play the Qcento as a last say, or whatever the case, you're in trouble. I don't feel super comfortable playing the Foglets here unless it's round one, because, you know, then they'll maybe dedicate some of their tall removal early on. But, yeah. So you gotta play it more control focused than anything. Sometimes I think about keeping Winter Queen and then mulliganing it back later, but I know that when I do this, I tend to not get the amount of thinning that I like to have by late game, so that, you know, normally I'm just putting it back these days. Couple versions of Hospitality going around. Calvi, it's one of them with the tactics, and then you have just the Blight Makers and hoping for the best. I've been experimenting with it. When I put Oniro, I find I'm losing points. When I don't have Oniro, I'm not pulling cards. So I'm still working on the version I like the best of that one. At some point I'll play it.
As good as dead, that lot.
It's very important for me to start really taking off in this round here. So sometimes you want to play on the opposite row of the Frost, right? This is almost the only exception with the Aparian Phantom, because you want to be able to use the order at the end of the round. I don't want to go super tall with this because they will reset it, right? So we got to get enough points to make it worth it, but then we have to dump off at some point and use that order. Especially with the amount of people playing Vilgefortz, right? You would just lose it completely, whereas on a reset, you'd still have it. Kind of have to prepare for everything early on in the season.
Resistance is futile.
13-4, we get 2 points on the pass, like the end round and then the next round, so something like that's not bad. We're at the point in the round now where we have to stay ahead at the end of every turn to put ourselves in a position to win, right? Like I mentioned, we got to win this round. We got to bleed out some of those key resources so that short round, it's not a lot of stuff left, right? I'll do whatever I have to do here, even if it means taking the Red Riders, both rows, 2 turns, bringing out Winter Queen. Or just pounding the back row. That's not a bad idea either, because we could still use Leader. And then we also want to set up Dominance for Eridan and the Riders. Like, that's 2 things that could be sort of round changing, you know? So, couple things here. I could use Order to get rid of Bruxa, which I think is fair because it shouldn't be difficult to proc the Thrive on that every turn. And it splits the difference, right? We get rid of one of our engines, but then there's that, right? So, I'm looking at this here, and this is sort of like their opportunity, you know? If you're going to pass, you should do it here. There was consideration to use a leader charge just to make sure that we didn't run into this problem, but, you know, if they do continue to play, then we have to punish that. And luckily we do. Been seeing a lot of that Ring of Favor to try and get out of the round with this deck too, so something you gotta prepare for. I think that we're just fine killing that off. It puts us right back where we want to be, actually. And now we have Dominance. We can play the Riders on whatever else they play. Since they took Ring early, I don't expect them to have a whole lot they'd want to play at this point. Usually you dump Ring when you're trying to just say, okay, it's my chance to get out now. You gotta love the new Wrath. And the reason why you want to win round 1 and bleed round 2 with this is because obviously they're going to have their top deck being all their best cards because of Calviet, right? So we can create that contrast of being able to play a bunch of bronzes next round. And I would have been prepared to play Bruiser, and I probably would have even played Eridan and felt kind of bad about it if we had to, but I definitely wouldn't play Oberyn there. I don't like keeping that in hand if I don't have a lot of tools to give Frost in the same round. So that's the problem with the new cards. I find they are very beneficial if you stack. If you don't have the actual ways to stack, then it doesn't feel great, and playing them sometimes would involve using both leader charges, so that's kind of the issue. I float the Foglet, you know, shamelessly here because, again, I don't value them a whole lot in a matchup like this.
Gentlemen, onward! Follow me!
Now we're starting to see the plays. I technically could pass and be card up. I don't know how important that is. I think we could do a little bit better here and see a little bit more. Right? Just jamming that feels pretty good.
Mistake stars reflected in a pond from night sky.
Not a stepfather.
Just getting a message here. I think Buddy wants to play Apex. Guess it's not gonna work out. I'm busy when they're free. They're free when I'm busy. So we got Bruiser again. That was actually a misclick. I thought it was for a second at the time, basically push it and then provide Frost. So again, don't listen to what I just did there. You basically, you can get the push, but the Frost is after, so yeah, it's whatever.
Those gems were nested. That's the trick.
We're doing pretty well here. We got leader out of the way. I don't mind playing Qcento in round 2 again. It's not going to look pretty if we do, but it's one of those things where it is what it is. We could do both leaders though to take out maybe some more tall punish. Also, it does give us a little bit better Qcento if we do just want to play it for the bleed. And Winter Queen comes out here too, demands a little bit of removal, right? I think this puts us in a spot where we should be able to pass. We don't necessarily have to, and the Qcento value does come in. 2 more rounds here of 4 damage per round. It's good carryover for round 3, and that would actually guarantee the last say too. The problem is if they pass, then we also get the extra Frost points. I have a pretty good setup for round 3 though. So just keep it simple, right? What I like about it is they still have to play. Massive. And yeah, that's just the way it goes. Card down going into round 3, guaranteed last say. Qcento, we're able to save the Oberyn into the King. I'm feeling pretty good. Gales here, right? We can mulligan some bronzes, but the pull rate for the golds will be really nice at this point. Toad. And I think that just does it. We miss a few, and that's one of the problems you get with Devotion every time. Is like, look, at least we can win a game without 12 provisions, another 8, another 9. Like, there's a lot of stuff I missed here. We'll get one of them at least, though, with the Gales, right? So I've been seeing Black Blood go around often. Obviously, we don't want to take like Oberyn into a Conqueror right now, but if you think about it, we can get like a small boost, like something like a Naglfar's crew. Because I think it's pretty well impossible to have that Black Blood play for no points. So there it is, you know. 3.7 provision, at least we could play around it. I just don't like the fact that the Qcento gets worse the longer we hold on to it, so there is consideration to try and put some things out that are going to give some frost damage. Maybe taking that Ardgeth, you know what I mean?
Not even compost.
I don't want to give them a big reset with the Tyrannalia, so we have to dump it. I think control's just the way to go in a situation like this.
Noble plan indeed, I say.
It's not great, but I think it might be the best toad we can get. Sometimes you don't get a great toad in round 3. I kind of like using toad early in games because of that, but it's fine. I think at this point they just know it's over. They'll reset 3 points on the toad. I guess playing the Conqueror there would have been a bit better, but that would have saved us a point, just because they would have boosted the other one anyways. That's fine there. Yeah, this one's a pretty easy win at the end of the round. We played it well going into round 2. And we got the same matchup here again. Pretty simple. We take that so we get the thinning out of the way. Again, going taller in round 1 doesn't feel too bad. Have a couple things in hand that rely on us stacking frost, but you don't want to have too many things in hand that depend on that, because then you can't get all the payoffs before the frost goes away.
Onward, sons of Nilfgaard!
Different game, same opening. Could try it a little bit more aggressive here. Maybe a whole Foglet push. Maybe a whole Naglfar. I think the Foglet push does play for more points technically. It's also just a little riskier. I don't mind either play. Actually, it doesn't really play for more points because we get the 1 boost at the end of the turn on the Naglfar's crew, and we would have had the 2 boost if we played Foggle at the same turn, so it's about the same. It's actually a little bit better this way because you could split it up.
Not even compost.
We got to make a statement in the next turn or two. It's tough because I don't have really a lot to give Frost. Like, Tyrannalia Order is cool, but it almost has to be Gales into Ardgeth.
A fine vintage it would have made. Naivety is a fool's blessing.
Yeah, so we have that there. Then, exactly, Queen comes out, puts us in a spot, makes math difficult. Honestly, the Winter Queen Bamboozle's gotta be one of my favorite types of bamboozles in the game. If you guys are listening to this point of the video, let me know in the comments what your favorite sort of bamboozle or finesse play is in Gwent. I'm curious to know. Is it the horn trap? Is it the bamboozle with the queen? Like, there's so many different little things you can do here. So I'm about to show you what I don't really like about this card. It doesn't lock it because the frost kicks in on their turn. Therefore, they get to pull off the order, which is pretty annoying. So that's kind of the downside of the card. The plus side of the card is that it can sometimes work well, and that it will play for 9 points. We just push back to here. That's not bad here. It's making them commit a little bit more than I think they would have wanted to in round 1. Right? Here, you get the leader out of the way, but again, it's not a lot for Frost. Also, or for Nilfgaard Knights, but also I lost my train of thought. They got the Blightmaker packages, both of them. That's what I meant to say. That's like pretty lucky. Like the temple there, we would have just done better if it wasn't for that. So how do you compete with roughly 20-point lead and a bunch of bronzes in hand with no frost? Like, I could use full leader, or we could just try and defend. I think defending's better. Obviously, having that card advantage makes a little bit of a difference, but I got this new drink. It's like for hydration instead of caffeine, but it tastes really good. And it's sour cherry, but again, it's kind of like a Gatorade, basically, without the sugar. So I'm just double scooping this. It's probably the new wave. I think it's smart of them to pass in round 2. I don't know if they really want to try and play into that bleed. And here's what I'm talking about. So I hope that, you know, before saying anything about, well, how does it play against knights? You got lucky in the first game that you made it to this part, because it's a situation where I don't want to play Foglets and I don't want to play Caranthir at all. So that's why we opt to not even take those cards. And so now the only thing we really have on them is the leader, and I don't even know if they care that much. They still have the passive coming off the leader too. I feel like that leader feels like 2 leaders. It's funny because self wound, like the battle trance, it has the similar passive. I can compare the two. However, this one feels like it just plays for more points than alchemy.
We all make sacrifices. They can cause.
Listen, I don't love the fact that that's looking like the best removal for Imlerith's Wrath on their side, but I'm sure we'll get a better one. I think that's gonna be the defensive toad that I use here, that I was mentioning is possible in the intro part when I was explaining the deck. Just because, like, think about it. It goes on their side of the playing field when it hits 8 points and it keeps climbing throughout the rest of the rounds. It's gonna play for a lot of points, right? We might as well just take it.
Behold Nilfgaard's iron might!
I have lived long, seen all, and I am bored with it.
It's kind of tough to choose what to pick here. Bruiser's not bad, I guess. Conqueror is probably the best.
King Oberon, Skellige!
Normally, I sort of get a feeling for these things. Like, if I know I'm going to win, I can sort of tell or start to gather those thoughts at this point in the round. Maybe 6, 5 cards left, you know? You see how the actual round's going. But against knights, you don't know until the game's over.
Noble plan indeed, I say.
So versus playing things and giving them more to work with right now, I just kind of want to see what happens. Obviously keeping tabs on the Aparian Phantom as well. 15 points and counting is kind of a big deal. Gotta find a good time to use that order just in case. They got to premium that defender for sure. That's like the next one. Actually, the game's bugging. It probably is premium. I noticed that even with the... Like, when the new patch dropped, I think they've been trying to fix it. But, like, a lot of these cards I have premium, like Aparian Phantom, I believe Eridan as well. Like, you can kind of tell because they look fuzzy. So in this event, we drew our Frost cards late in the game. So obviously we have a little bit more than what we would like to have or what we know what to do with, but it should just be fine. This is a situation where Qcento would have played for a lot of points. I'm kind of disappointed because right after I pushed the defender to the back row, I only have one more push. So I'm going to be losing like some mad points if I basically push the defender then kill the card behind it. So you kind of have to wait till maybe they play something else on the back row. But meanwhile, the removal is just losing 2 points per turn, so... Unfortunately, monsters in this matchup have a very difficult time getting dominance, which is why I didn't want to, like, fill the deck too much with cards that require it. The amount of points they're getting off basically cooing that. 25 balanced game. Like I told you guys, all of a sudden now we're losing. And luckily they put their payoff in a spot where, you know, it kind of complements the strat that I was going for, and we could start basically getting some value back right away. Now, it's a little bit late for an Ivar play, is it not? So I don't know if they have Ivar in this deck. They must not. Yeah, if they're going to Beauclair it instead, they definitely don't have Ivar. I think it's probably more important than the defender, if anything. I just had to boost something unboosted there. I forgot Igni exists, but I'm not expecting it at this point. Again, more frost than we know what to deal with here.
A fitting gift for our king.
And Yen just doesn't do it. We got another Nilfgaard matchup here, guys. Now, obviously, when you see the leader ability, you think it's Mill, and I wouldn't even doubt it, because, you know, I can imagine getting a little bit salty this season with all these, like, crazy decks just in the first few days. So, although I don't want to have certain things like Caranthir and Winter Queen in hand, we kind of have to put them back knowing that they're going to get potentially milled. That hurts.
Not appearances.
What I don't like about this Wear It card is it, like, forces you to play your best card when you don't want to play it, so they're essentially still taking it from you, right? That's, like, the super annoying part. I wouldn't have played that in this round, there's no reason to. Of
I
course.
shall be your eyes, my lord.
So I'm already looking at it like you took 2 good cards away from me. You took 3 good cards away from me. I gotta put us in a spot though where we can maybe even tempo pass on them. At this point, there's not a lot of gold cards left, so it makes sense to put Naglfar out here. Otherwise, I just wouldn't, you know what I mean? Like, if we had all the other gold still in deck, it'd be too risky.
Now, unto
It's
the
probably the nicest bruiser I've ever had. They're trying to take my foglet away. 43-2. The problem is, if I didn't play there, then like they would have so much round control by just snagging the foglet. And if I did play there, then it's like overkill. So it kind of sucks, but it is what it is. I don't know if we can push, just given the like lack of gold cards, you know? I kind of want to see if I can get out the location just to see if I can get a little bit of carryover. Maybe we can sort of get out the leader in a panic. Couple little things, right?
Her grace will not be pleased.
Match that with Burgundy. What a demented thought.
That just feels like we have to do that. That's a nice little removal, honestly.
Resistance is futile.
Clean. Free points, thank you. And then we get the extra frost. So they play right into the bruiser, right? Like, how do you not play? I wasn't even like thinking about bleeding here, but it just looked too good not to. Mill with the night package, nice.
If it's peace you desire, prepare for war.
Now we got pretty lucky here, but I don't know why they played into Ardgeth. I don't know if that was the play. You know, they could have maybe just stacked the melee instead. I think it's fair to kind of go all out here, you know? Like when you start seeing these kind of critical errors, things that you can exploit, like why wouldn't you? That's why I'm deciding at this point to put down the Aparian Phantom, just because like I want to get it the best it's going to be. We got more space to push here. Another one of these annoying problems.
encore.
They're going to take the bruiser, right? I thought that was pretty slick. I don't think they saw that one. That was like an afterthought for me too. They take the bruiser anyways, like, yo, give me that. Again, stacking it because we could take it with us for next round. I guess they would have pulled into the snowdrop off the leader because they used it that way. This looks pretty 2-0 to me, but they do lose a couple points here. So, you know, the longer we play in, the less carryover we take. At least I know the couple cards that I have in hand are good, and that we're not going to be, you know, down cards. Like, they didn't mill us all the way. That hurts. Actually, they're eating a 4. But then they actually play into the frost. So they have to play another card. Yeah, it's over.
Take it to the woods and release the hounds.
Just a week. That is all I need.
And it barely does it too. Imagine if they had to play all of it. You know, if I were to use the order on that, I could have probably went all in and just 2-0'd, but at least this way, it feels like, you know, 100%. Like, I don't think you can lose in this situation. Riders, it'd be scary to take another mulligan, but at the same time, they can mill the rider. That Frost basically plays for like 0 points. Sure enough, they do mill the rider. You could still play the riders off Oberyn. I don't know if you would.
I have lived long and seen all, and I am bored with it.
So it's 4, 5, 9, whereas Bruiser... it doesn't matter. Like, I think that's just better, because Bruiser pushing that back to kill that, like, we still have 4 turns worth of Frost here. Of course they have Treason. But you see what I'm talking about? Like, we can just play a little non-interactive here, just dump down specials, we should just be fine. And then also, just putting that down to set up for like a really big navigator. This is something I've been waiting to show you guys for like the whole video, so it helps.
Creaky door.
You see? I wanted to get that out of the way before they quit. Yeah, there. Yo, W's in the chat for 1,000 monster wins, guys. That's what the award was for. And last one here, we got, again, Hospitality. And, you know, I try to keep it a little bit interesting with the games that I'm getting for you guys here in the videos, but, like, it is what it is. I queue what I queue. I don't know about you guys, but some of the matches now have been starting very slow since the patch. Like, basically after you queue in, it like loads up like a screen that looks like this, and it just sticks there for like 30 seconds. I don't know if you maybe experienced that as well. Lucky enough to pull into both Foglets in the same round. Might as well play into the Tall Punish now, just because, like, I don't even like having these cards later on, so. It's funny, too, because a lot of people think we're playing, like, the toxic version of the deck, but, like, low-key, it's just the wholesome one. So sometimes when they see Foglets, they overcommit to remove them. So we got the tempo pass we're looking for. I think at that point, like, they just realize it's not going to happen, right? That's a bit nicer.
Not even composted.
Might as well take the Thin here. I don't know how I feel about taking Ardgath or other Frost yet before playing the Riders, just to get the extra point, because again, it comes down to resource management. I want to thin the deck, so if we do go into round 3, it's going to be a nice, good round 3 hand, and having that extra leader could make a difference. If I'm going to play it, maybe just use it somewhere before the pass. I don't think you want to boost the Phantom in that case, just because it makes it that much more attractive for them to reset, so we'll make them work for it a little bit more. We do play into like a Joust, but I think it's fine. And finally, we have a situation where I actually don't even mind using leader. Like, we got to get rid of the Caranthir problem quickly, but now it's justified. There's also just jamming it. You know what I mean though? Like, imagine getting all these turns of Frost, like having the Tall Punish in hand and a lot of tradable bronzes.
With Imperial gold.
I don't love the Defender coming down because obviously it's going to eat up some of that Frost damage, but we still have at least a turn to think about how we're going to deal with it. Might be a decent time to play into the Slave Trader because we have 6 cards in hand. That's a lot of vitality there, so it's sitting at like a 9-point play.
Here's our finest cook in stock.
Just really don't know what we'd infuse, right? Like, it doesn't really matter. Maybe that, just in case they find a way to push it back, which I don't think they do. Yeah, 10 points actually, because the Frost. Yeah, I definitely don't think I love having 2 traders, but one of them feels pretty good.
The good of the Empire, that is what matters.
See, they know better than to boost up the Defender because we have removal, but at the same time, they play into the Frost too. So, I'm looking at this, okay, look, we have 1 point per turn on the Trader, 1 point per turn on the Ciri, 1 point per turn on the Aparian Phantom. They're losing 4 points per turn. And we won on even, so I think that one's in the books, guys. We'll see you tomorrow with another video. Have a great day.